From 2011 to 2015, the Wayne County Treasurer foreclosed upon approximately 1 in 4 Detroit properties for non-payment of property taxes. Once the properties were foreclosed, many were left vacant, many were vandalized, and stripped of everything of value. These derelict properties lowered property values and caused anyone who could get out to flee. The property tax foreclosure crisis in Detroit has wiped out entire neighborhoods of Detroit's most vulnerable residents. Poor and working class black families have borne the brunt of this crisis, and it should not have happened. According to the Michigan Constitution, no property should be assessed at more than 50% of its market value. It turns out the city government systematically inflated the property tax assessments of homes in Detroit beyond this legal limit. In fact, between 2009 and 2015, 55 to 85% of Detroit properties were unconstitutionally assessed each year. This led to illegally inflated taxes on those properties. Why? Because in 2008, home values in Detroit plummeted as a result of the Great Recession. But instead of reducing property tax assessments to match the lower value of homes, the government robotically copied the previous rates, making only minor adjustments. It was no surprise that residents weren't able to pay. And here's the kicker. Many families were not supposed to be paying property taxes in the first place because they qualify for the Michigan poverty tax exemption. But Detroit didn't publicize this and made the application process so difficult that it was nearly impossible to complete. So when we look at the decimation that unconstitutional property tax assessments have left behind, who is to blame? Working and poor people who are struggling to provide a home for their families? Or the government, who systematically and illegally inflated the assessed values of homes to increase their property tax revenue, then seized homes from families when they could not afford to pay? Join our fight to end unconstitutional tax foreclosures in Detroit.
Here's a quick explanation of assessments and overassessments in Detroit. First of all, let's start with the basics. Government wants to tax people fairly. If you have a more expensive house, you should pay more in taxes. The property tax is supposed to work like the sales tax. Everyone pays the same tax rate. The Michigan sales tax rate is 6%, for example. So if you buy something that costs $10, like a pack of light bulbs, you would pay 6 cents in sales taxes. If you buy something that costs $100, like this pair of sneakers, you pay $6 in sales tax. It's fair that you pay more sales tax for a pair of shoes than a light bulb because you're paying the same tax rate for both. Both are taxed at a rate of 6%, and 6% of $100 is more than 6% of $10. This should be true of property taxes too. For example, the Detroit property tax rate is usually around 2.8%. So this means that if your home is worth $10,000, you should pay $280 in property taxes. And if your home is worth $100,000, you should pay $2,800 in property taxes. This is only fair because everyone is paying the same property tax rate. But when the city of Detroit overvalues low-value homes and undervalues high-value homes, people don't pay the same tax rate anymore, and the city on the whole loses money. Let's look at an example. If the city overvalues a low-valued home at $20,000, the owner would end up paying $560 in property taxes, which is $280 more than they should. If the city undervalues a high-valued house at $50,000, the owner would end up paying $1,400 in property taxes, which is $1,400 less than they should. So in these scenarios, the first home is paying an effective tax rate of 5.6%, and the second home is paying an effective tax rate of 1.4%. Since it is critical that the city of Detroit correctly calculates home values so that taxes can be fairly applied, how do they do it? With the sales tax, you know the value of the thing that you're going to be taxed on up front. For example, a pair of sneakers you're interested in buying have the price listed on them. But with property taxes, authorities must estimate how much your home is worth every year. So how do they do this? A home sales price is a strong indicator of its value. The value of your home is basically what someone would pay to buy it on an open market. So in an example where a house sells for $50,000, it's pretty fair to say that the market value of that house is about $50,000. This, of course, is not the case if you have transactions like a property gets sold at auction or you have a quitclaim deed to a family member. But if it sells on the open market, it's pretty safe to say that it's a good proxy for value. Because properties don't sell often, the assessor needs a way to estimate property values even when a property hasn't recently sold. So they estimate a property's market value using a mathematical formula to factor in things like square footage, number of bedrooms and bathrooms, quality of construction, neighborhood condition, and age of the property to determine what a property's market value is worth. This formula is what's used to estimate a property's market value for the purposes of deriving a tax bill. Once city officials have estimated the market value of a house, they take a couple more steps to determine exactly what an individual owner pays. They calculate the assessed value, which by Michigan law is half of the market value of the house, and the taxable value, which is the portion of your property's assessed value that the city of Detroit is legally allowed to tax you on. This is how they come up with a property tax bill. It's the millage rate, or property tax rate, times the taxable value. If the city's formula estimates the value of a house just right, that's great. That property owner pays their fair share in taxes. Here we see a house with a market value of $50K, and the city's formula has also put the estimated market value at $50K, meaning the homeowner pays $1,400 in taxes, and that's the just and fair amount that the homeowner should be paying. If a property is underassessed, the owner is paying less in taxes than is fair based on the value of the home. Here we see a potential example of this, where the actual market value is $50K, but the estimated value is $25K. This means that the homeowner pays less in taxes, and based on the value of the home, they should be paying more. If a property is overassessed, the opposite happens. The owner pays more in taxes than is fair based on the value of the home. So here's an example of this, same actual market value, but here the estimated market value is higher at $75K. That means that the homeowner pays more in taxes than they should based on what their home is actually worth. It's not surprising that over and under assessments happen because assessments are best guesses based on limited information. However, a growing body of evidence shows that over and under assessments don't happen randomly. In cities across America, the data show that if your house is expensive, you're likely to pay less than your fair share in taxes, and if your house is inexpensive, you're likely to be paying more than your fair share. In an ideal situation, a sales ratio might look like this, a flat line, which would tell you that whether you're in the bottom 10% or the top 10% of sales, you were getting market values that were assessed accurately relative to how the home sells. However, in practice, the data looks like this. Across the nation, lower-priced homes are assessed at a higher value relative to their actual sales price. Between 2010 and 2016, the city illegally inflated the property tax assessments of the vast majority of Detroit homes and overtaxed Detroiters by $600 million. After the citywide reappraisal, assessments generally fell, but property tax inequity got worse. Before the reappraisal, the lowest valued homes were assessed at roughly 3 times the rate of the highest valued. After the reappraisal, the lowest valued homes were assessed at 4 times the rate of the highest valued. Between 2018 and 2021, the city assessed the highest valued homes at 17.3% of their value, and the lowest valued homes at 88.2% of their value. This means that the city assessed the lowest valued at over 5 times the rate applied to the highest valued homes. Today, City Council convenes to discuss how to make property tax assessments in Detroit more fair. We'll be hearing from residents, experts, and city staff on the subject.
The city of Detroit is still overcharging Detroit residents on their property taxes. And there's one major reason why. The person responsible for valuing our homes is not qualified to do the job. Under Michigan law, anyone overseeing assessments at Detroit scale, more than $3.7 billion in property value, must hold the top-level Michigan Master Assessing Officer, or MMAO certification. Current Detroit assessor Alvin Horn does not have this certification. To become certified, an assessor must go through a year of training, pass multiple advanced classes, complete an appraisal report, and pass 2 exams with at least 75%. Horn hasn't done that. This means he cannot legally approve Detroit's assessments and must have someone else sign off for him. Detroit needs an assessor with the proper qualifications, not Alvin Horn. Beyond lacking the qualifications, Horn continues to use unapproved methods to depreciate the value of older homes. This inflates the assessed value, and then the property taxes owed for older homes, which most Detroiters live in. Michigan law and the State Tax Commission require assessors to depreciate homes 1% per year, up to 55%, but Horn and his assessment division are not following the law. The result is that thousands of Detroit residents, mostly in low-income, majority Black neighborhoods, are paying more than they should in property taxes. Horn and his assessment division are supposed to send assessment notices to residents to give them a fair chance to appeal, but they continue to mail notices that don't meet the requirements of Detroit's Property Tax Reform Ordinance. Detroit needs an assessor who is fully certified, transparent, and committed to property tax justice. Until Mayor-elect Sheffield replaces Alvin Horn, Detroit homeowners will continue paying the price. It's time to remove Alvin Horn. It's time for an assessor who follows the law. It's time for property tax justice.
This is Geraldine Tyler. She owned a condo in Hennepin County, Minnesota, but like many Americans, she fell behind on her property taxes. Tyler owed about $15,000 in property taxes, interest, and penalties. The county took her condo and sold it for $40,000. Here's the issue. The county kept all the money. Not just what she owed, they took the extra $25,000 too. Tyler said that's unconstitutional. It violates the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment, which says, private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Before the Supreme Court decided the case, the Michigan Supreme Court decided a similar case in 2020 called Raffaelli v. Oakland County. The court ruled that even if the government properly forecloses on a property due to unpaid property taxes, it's illegal under the Michigan State Constitution for the government to keep more money than the homeowner owed in property taxes. When Geraldine Tyler's case went before the U.S. Supreme Court, they agreed with the Michigan Supreme Court in a rare unanimous decision. The justices said, you can't take someone's property to settle a debt and then keep the extra money. That's not collecting property taxes. That's taking property without just compensation. They pointed out that this principle goes back centuries, all the way to the Magna Carta. It's also supported by state law and court precedent. Why does this case matter? Because even if you owe the government money, you still have constitutional rights. The government cannot sell your property to pay off your debt without giving you the leftover money from the sale. That's theft.
Do you think your home may be overassessed? Many homes across Detroit are being overvalued, and most homeowners don't even know it. When a home is assessed too high, it can lead to unfair property taxes. In just a few minutes, you can check your property tax assessment and see if it looks accurate. Go to illegalforeclosures.org, click Get Help, and fill out the property tax appeal form today. In 2025, our movement for property tax justice secured several wins. We helped 440 Detroit families access wraparound services that help to keep them in their homes. We filed 252 property tax appeals free of charge, fighting illegally inflated tax bills head-on. We exposed the truth. Detroit is still overassessing homes under $50,000, pushing working families toward tax foreclosure. And we forced the release of Detroit's long-overdue IAAO assessment ratio study, confirming what residents already knew. The system is broken. We brought the community together through coffee and stories, mobilizing over 600 Detroiters in the fight for fair housing. We took the fight national with the launch of Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Homeownership in America, featuring Professor Bernadette Atuahene and Professor Ibram X. Kendi. And when foreclosures threatened our neighborhoods,
we didn't stay quiet.
We forced a unanimous city council resolution, organized press conferences, and mobilized hundreds of calls and letters to demand a property tax foreclosure moratorium. In 2025, we fought for property tax justice, and we're just getting started. These are just our wins from 2025. We've been at this since 2017, So we have many, many more wins than this. Follow the Coalition for Property Tax Justice on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok to see what else will.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is Professor Bernadette Atuahine here. Excited to see people logging in. We are expecting to have a really significant turnout today. All right, this is our, we have, as you know, the Coalition for Property Tax Justice put together a playbook for the first 100 days of the Sheffield administration in order to achieve property tax justice. And so this press conference is this is day 50 of Sheffield's administration. And so this is an update on how they're doing. And we'll be having another press conference on day 100, which is April 10th. All right, for those of you who are new to this issue, let me just catch you up on what's going on. Well, we did a study, I did a study that showed that between 2009 and 2015, in each of these 7 years, anywhere between 53 and 84% of properties the city was assessing in violation of the Michigan State Constitution, which quite clearly says no property can be assessed at more than 50% of its market value. And then we broke up the data into what we call 5 quintiles, quintile 1 being the lowest valued homes, quintile 5 being the highest valued homes. And so we found in quintile 1 and 2 that 95% or more of the homes were being assessed in violation of the Michigan State Constitution. But when you got to quintile 5, it was less than 20%, which means it's the most vulnerable homeowners in Detroit who are really bearing the burden of this illegality. So when Duggan came into office, this was obviously a really big issue, and he promised to do something about it. And he, in fact, did do something about it. In the first 2 years that he was in office, he did an across-the-board cut in property taxes. But what was actually needed when you have, I'm going to be using the word regressivity quite a bit, and that just means when the lower valued homes are taxed at a higher rate than the higher valued homes. So when you have that going on, what you really need is a deep reduction in the lower valued homes, and then sometimes an increase in the higher valued homes. So an across the board cut is not going to get the job done. So we did a study after those 2 across the board cuts, and we found that through the middle, things did get better. So that's the good news. But for the lowest valued homes, they were still being severely overassessed after those 2 across the board cuts. And lots of you have been with us for a long time, and you know that no matter what we did with the Duggan administration, we brought data out, we brought study after study, we peer reviewed the studies with Duke University, University of Virginia, but the prior administration just would not acknowledge what the empirical evidence clearly showed, which is that the lower valued homes are still being overassessed. And guess what? You cannot fix a problem until you acknowledge that the problem exists. So under the Duggan administration, we were able to make no headway whatsoever on these low valued homes still being overassessed. So as you all know, back then, Council President Mary Sheffield was the Coalition for Property Tax Justice's #1 ally in passing legislation to really address this issue. So as she comes to be mayor, we have a wonderful opportunity to actually do something about the problem. Again, we no longer have a mayor who is denying the facts, the empirical evidence, right? We're acknowledging that the lower valued homes are still being overassessed. And now we're working together hand in hand to do something about it. And so that is the good news. And that's what we're here to talk about, is through the coalition's years of serving community members, through the Property Tax Appeal Project, through the coalition's decade of research, we have put together, again, a first 100 days plan, which is a play-by-play, a line-by-line playbook on how we can actually get this done for Detroiters. And so we want to be able to announce by the end of the year that there is no more property tax injustice in Detroit. The lower valued homes are no longer being systematically overassessed. So that is possible, you all. I want you to know that this is now possible now that we have a change in the guard. So that's a catch up in terms of where we are. And I would now like to introduce the first speaker of our press conference. Many of you, again, who have been following this movement for property tax justice know Professor Christopher Berry. He is no stranger to this movement. So Professor Berry is the William J. and Alicia Townsend Friedman Professor at the Harris School of Public Policy, and he's the director of the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation at the University of Chicago. He was the inaugural director of the Center for Municipal Finance, and he is currently a faculty affiliate. Now, Professor Berry, every year, as you know, has done what's called an assessment ratio study to really assess where we are in terms of assessments in Detroit. He did one for this year, and he's here now to report on his findings. With no further ado, let's give a hand clap and virtually for Professor Chris Berry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Atuahene. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here to speak with all of you who are in attendance. For those of you who signed on early, and you may have seen the videos that we're playing, gave you a gist of what I'm going to do, but let me just give a little explanation for those of you who may not have seen that or been familiar with what a sales ratio study is. But essentially, one of the ways that we determine whether assessments in any kind of jurisdiction are fair and accurate is we do something called a ratio study, where the true test of the accuracy of an assessment is to compare the assessed value of a home with the price that it sells for. And what the assessor is trying to tell us is what's the market value of the home. Many homes don't sell in a particular year, and so we don't know, and it's subject to some debate. But when a home sells, we see what its actual market value is, and we can evaluate an assessor by how closely their assessments follow the sales prices of the homes that they are charged with assessing. And I've done these kind of sales ratio studies all over the country. If you're interested in seeing them for other jurisdictions, there's a website, propertytaxproject.uchicago.edu, and you can look at them in many jurisdictions. But I want to talk to you today about the latest study we've done on the tentative 2026 assessments for Detroit, where essentially we've done exactly as I described. We take homes that have sold recently, we compare them with their assessed values. And as was indicated in the video that showed, there's going to be errors. We don't expect any assessor to be perfect, but the question is, are the errors random in a way that makes them fair? So if we're off by a few percent here and there, and that's uncorrelated with the price of the property, that system could still be fair, even though it's not perfectly accurate. But when we see that systematically homes at the bottom end of the price distribution are being overvalued and homes at the top are being undervalued, that's a particular kind of unfairness that we refer to as regressivity, meaning the top end homes are paying a lower property tax rate than the bottom homes. And so I want to show you our most recent results for Detroit that I just described, and the complete study is available online at a link that will be provided. But let me just start with this graph, which hopefully you all can see. And there's a lot of numbers on here. You don't need to digest them all. I'll just call your attention to a few, but we've divided this. Can you all see my cursor as it moves around on the screen if I use that? Okay, great. So let's just focus on what we call the bins, 1 through 10. We divided the homes into price groups from the lowest to the highest. The lowest priced homes are in this group 1. The most expensive homes are in group 10. And so let's just kind of compare what we find. In the bottom decile, the lowest price homes, the median sale price was $30,000 for those homes, and the median assessed value was $22,000. So on the one hand, you might say, oh, the median assessed value is lower than the median sale price. But remember an important point that Professor Atuahene made, which is that according to the Michigan Constitution, this number should be no more than 50%. In fact, what we can see is the median ratio is about 80% for these homes, which is above the constitutional limit of 50%. Then furthermore, if we just count amongst all these homes, we have 446 homes in this decile, 83% of them were assessed at above the 50% threshold that's allowed by Michigan law. So in this bottom group, we see dramatic and pervasive overvaluations by the assessor. Then let's just jump to the top group. This number 10 is what we're calling these are the most expensive homes. In Detroit, the top 10%, their median sale price was $275,000. Median assessed value was $87,000, and that gives them a median ratio of 33%. That is below the Michigan limit, so that is constitutional. And if you look over here, well, what fraction of them were actually assessed above the limit? Only 16% were being assessed at above the legal limit of 50%. So if we compare, 83% of homes at the bottom are being assessed beyond the constitutional limit. Only 16% of homes at the top are being assessed beyond that limit. Furthermore, the average ratio at the bottom, or the median ratio, is about 80% compared to 33%, which means it's more than double. The homes at the bottom are being assessed at a rate more than double the homes at the top. And if you want to really get into the details, I need to kind of follow this column down. As you go down this column, homes are getting more and more expensive, and you can see that the median ratio is getting lower and lower, which is to say there's regressivity in this system, the homes at the bottom systematically being assessed at a greater share of their true value than the homes at the top. This is really the very definition of regressivity. And so it's a problem that still is existing and pervasive in Detroit today. I do want to emphasize that these numbers look a lot better today than they did 5 or even 10 years ago. There has been progress in the Detroit system, and I definitely want to give credit where it's due for these improvements. But nevertheless, the regressivity continues to exist. The lower priced homes continue to be overassessed, while higher priced homes continue to be underassessed. And so it's a problem that still needs to be fixed, despite some notable progress over the years. And I will stop there. Happy to talk about more details of any of this in the Q&A section.
Professor Berry, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And now, again, the main conclusion here is that we can see the lower valued homes are still being overassessed. Like Professor Berry said, there's been a lot of progress, but we still have work to be done. Right? The people in the lowest valued homes are the most vulnerable Detroiters. And so we need to make sure that we make sure those homes are not overassessed. And you know, we have the tools and the abilities to do that. We just need the political will. And we believe with this new administration, we do have the political will necessary to bring home a victory here. All right, I'm going to go through our first 100 days plan. Give me a second. Let me share my screen. All right. All right, we wanted to give you all a progress report of what's going on. All right, we have our first 100 days plan has 5 pillars. Okay. Pillar 1 is we want to place an MMAO qualified individual as Detroit's chief assessing officer. All right, what does that mean? To do the assessments of a city the size of Detroit, you have to have a special qualification called an MMAO. Our current assessor, Alvin Horn, does not have that qualification, yet he's allowed to be the chief assessing officer. So what we're proposing is don't fire Alvin Horn, right? But we do need to find an MMAO qualified assessor to be leading the assessment office. Alvin Horn has a lot of skills, but his quantitative skill set is lacking. And so we need someone with a heavy quantitative skill set to be our chief assessor running the office. Currently, what Detroit is doing is a kind of back end run. So because Alvin Horn does not have the qualification required by the state, the MMAO, they have another person signing the assessment role who does have the qualification, but that person is not running the office, right? And so we're just saying, look, we've been overassessed for a long time here in Detroit. We deserve someone who has the proper state qualification to be running Detroit's assessment division. It's a very simple ask, right? We want the person running Detroit's assessment division to have the proper qualification, an MMAO. It's just a very basic ask. The second prong of our first 100 days plan has to do with enforcing the property tax reform ordinance that we struggled for, and over 2 years of organizing. Many of our fighters are right here in this press conference right now who did all of this, sending letters, showing up at public. I mean, there was so much work done to pass this property tax reform ordinance in 2023, and it came into effect in January 1st, 2024. And so what we're saying is, but to my dismay and the great dismay of many people, many of the elements of that reform ordinance are not being implemented. Right? For instance, the assessment notice, there are, again, I want to acknowledge progress where progress has been made. There have been several elements of the assessment notice that have been upgraded. So let's, acknowledge advancement where advancement has happened, but there are several other important aspects that have not, namely providing clear definitions of terms, right? Assessed value, taxable value. Everyday Detroiters don't know what all of this means. So it's important when they use a term on the assessment notice to define that term. And another example is very clear instructions and making it super easy for people to file an appeal. So those are some of the changes that came into effect in January 2024 that are still not being abided by in the assessment notices that many of you received just a few weeks ago. The next thing is we need to produce an annual independent assessment ratio study. The city, obviously, the University of Chicago every year produces one, but the city needs to produce an assessment ratio study. We had a meeting with the Sheffield administration yesterday, and they have promised that this year, the IAAO, just like they did an assessment ratio study last year, they'll be doing one this year. And so at our next press conference, we hope to report that that study has been done. But that's what we were told, is that this study is being done by the IAAO this year as well. And let me just say the important thing about this study is what the property tax reform ordinance does is it says, look, if we have evidence like we do now, right? Professor Berry just told us that over 80% of the lowest valued homes are being overassessed. Why in the world would we then expect each and every Detroiter in that home to file an appeal when we have evidence that they're being overassessed? So the property tax reform ordinance, once we have this evidence of systemic overassessment, gives city council the opportunity to say, hey, we want to have the March Board of Review this entire category of homes that we have evidence is being overassessed, right? So we put the burden where it should be, which is on our elected officials to get it right and not on vulnerable homeowners. And so without this assessment ratio study done in a timely manner, City Council does not have the ability to do this instruction. So although the Alvin Horn says we are going to have another assessment ratio study, the point is, if it's not done on time, we do not have the capability to, again, shift the burden to the city to have them fix the problem versus having one by one everybody filing an appeal. The other thing is we need to provide these assessment data online every year, January 1st. This year, the data was provided almost 4 weeks late, but I do have to say we worked very closely with the deputy mayor. And although it was late, he was doing everything possible to make sure that we got this data, because we need this data in order to help you all the homeowners in the city, file the appeal for free through our property tax appeal application that we'll be talking about a little later in the program. So it was late, but I do want to acknowledge the Herculean efforts of the deputy mayor. He was on it, really trying to make sure we got this data. And so I'm confident that there was some transition issues. I'm confident that next year we'll be getting the data on time, given, again, the efforts of the deputy mayor on this score. Third is we need to stop overassessing these lower valued homes. And this is where we have some opportunities. Again, Professor Berry and I met with the Sheffield administration yesterday, and Professor Berry is working with, this is not just a Detroit problem. Okay, let me start there. The evidence says that Blacks and Hispanics on average are paying a 10 to 13% higher property tax rate than whites for the same bundle of goods, which equals about 10 to 13% more per year. All right. And that is about $300 to $400 more per year on average. So you need to understand these overassessments as a national problem. And Detroit is ground zero for this national problem. Because in Detroit, since 2009, we've had 1 in 3 homes completed the tax foreclosure process. 1 in 3. So Detroit, we haven't seen this number of property tax foreclosures in American history since the Great Depression. So we need to understand Detroit as ground zero for this national problem. And Professor Berry is working on this issue nationally. He's got funding, he has a team. And yesterday we got the commitment of the Sheffield administration to work with his team closely, who has a lot of data science experience to really get these assessments correct, right? So that is the good news, is we got that commitment from the Sheffield administration. And again, Professor Chris Berry stands ready, and we can talk about that more in Q&A. The other thing is, we have some very specific problems that we've identified. One is that the assessor is using only warranty deeds in their analysis. And this is not just us who brought this up. The Auditor General also found this as a problem and admonished the assessor for this. And so what is a warranty deed? Basically, most of the property here in Detroit is sold by quitclaim deed, and so if you're only using this, warranty deed is the kind of strongest deed used in really high value transactions. And so if you're only using those deeds of these high value transactions, then of course you're going to be getting the property values in Detroit incorrect, because most of the properties are transferred through quitclaim deeds, and you're not systematically including those in your analysis. The next thing is the way the assessor depreciates property is highly problematic. What the law says in Michigan is that you're supposed to depreciate a property 1% per year. Why do we care about this? Because many of you know in Detroit, we have a lot of old homes. And if you're not depreciating them properly, then they're going to be overvalued. And that's what's happening. They're not following the standard 1% a year. And it's supposed to be, if you go away from the standard, you're supposed to justify it. But again, Detroit is not following this rule about 1% per year. And so it's leading to overassessment because depreciation is not being done correctly. Next is we want to protect owner-occupier exemptions. What we found, 2 things. The big problem here is last year, the Coalition for Property Tax Justice was flooded with complaints where our people who come to Coffee and Stories, many of you know that our organizing space every first Saturday from 10:30 to noon at Eastside Community Network. We have, again, our organizing space, and so many and the people who come there, we call our homekeeper warriors. So many of our homekeeper warriors came to us at Coffee and Stories saying, they just removed my owner-occupier exemption, right? Because in Detroit, if you live in your home, you get an exemption that makes your taxes lower. And their exemptions were just removed, right? And so people, and not only were the exemptions removed, but that means their property taxes went up, and they were being asked to pay 3 years of back taxes for the difference as well. So you can only imagine, these are mostly our seniors, how much stress and anguish this caused when people's PREs, owner-occupant exemptions, were being removed. And again, from the people that we serve, we helped people, over 50 different people, get their PRE back. And the process of getting it back was very, very difficult, right? And the whole thing about when it was removed, right? A lot of the people said they only received 1 letter. And if they didn't respond to the letter, then their PRE was removed. And so what we're first saying is, look, we all want a property tax roll where we don't have anybody claiming exemptions that they don't deserve. But if you are going to remove the exemptions from, again, longtime Detroiters, our seniors, we're going to have to follow a process that is very transparent and fair, right? And we're going to have to give people more notice before taking away their PRE, which is principal residence exemption. Again, that's the owner occupancy. So, and then we also found that there are certain, again, our organization just looks at the tax roll, and we find that certain people having LLCs have a PRE. Why does this concern us? Because if you have an LLC, you are not supposed to have a PRE, period. That's what the law says. LLCs are not supposed to have a PRE. So if our organization can look at the property tax roll and see hundreds of properties with an LLC having the PRE, the assessor should be able to look at that, find that, and fix it. Our last pillar of our first 100 days plan is returning the money to overtaxed homeowners. Now, this one we understand will likely not be able to get done in the first 100 days because it involves the state. And so here, we're fighting for tax credits, okay? Because we have a series of programs that if you were foreclosed on and you live below the poverty tax line, there's a series of programs to help that population. The population that there has been no remedy for are the people who just paid. They didn't get foreclosed on, but they just paid. And again, these are mostly our seniors. And they, had to, pay Peter, rob Peter to pay Paul, or however that saying goes, right? But this is who we're looking for. We want to have tax credits for Detroiters who overpaid and they're still in their homes. And we're going to need state intervention to come behind the Sheffield administration to make this happen. So what we want to see here is not completion, because that's not possible in the first 100 days, but we want to see some very clear steps towards getting these tax credits for, again, Detroiters who stayed in their homes and just overpaid. So again, that is the summary, and the team is going to be dropping in the chat the whole first 100 days booklet, so you can see in detail all of the research, all of the citations. That first 100 days booklet provides all of our research on all of these issues, right? This is a well-researched plan, and we want you to look at that booklet and see the research for yourself. So what we're going to do is, again, this is the day 50 of the Sheffield administration. On day 100, we're going to be issuing a report card to let you all know how the Sheffield administration did on these 5 pillars. And an A will be full implementation. A B is partial implementation. A C, if there's no implementation, but they're actively working on it. They're going to get a D if there's no implementation and there's no active work. And F is to let you all know that the administration just refused to implement the suggestion. So we are going to be holding the Sheffield administration accountable and really communicating to you all how things are going in a very clear and transparent manner. And again, that day 100, the day 100 virtual press conference is when we're going to have the report card ready to report to you all how things are going. All right. Now I want to stop sharing my screen, and I want to introduce our next speaker that we have for you today, which is Alexandra Nichols. And Alexandra is a steering committee member of the Coalition for Property Tax Justice, and she's a seasoned education and media professional with the Detroit Public Schools Community District. She brings a dynamic blend of creative arts, production expertise, and community engagement to her work. She holds a master's in fine arts and motion pictures and television, and began her career studying screenwriting at the American Film Institute, laying a strong foundation in storytelling and cinematic craft. Alex was unfortunately also, while she was away getting these degrees in California, a victim of property tax foreclosure, and she's here today to share her story. Thank you, Alex.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the introduction. You all, I was overassessed I was overtaxed. That's the link between what Professor just shared and the story that I'm going to tell you right now. My story is anchored in my refusal to just move on. Our family home was owned since 1977 in historic Russell Woods area in Detroit. My mom was a school teacher. My dad worked for the sanitation department for the city of Detroit. And praise God, our parents sent us all to college from that legacy home. I'm one of 10 children that our father and mother have seen through this legacy home with so many memories and so much wealth and so many family and friends that know our home as the Nichols home. While living out of state, a yellow bag was placed on my front door of my home. A longtime neighbor friend of ours called to tell me this. When my mom passed, the home was put into my name. I just have to say, the Wayne County Treasurer's Office swept my house in a tax foreclosure auction and sold it in a blight bundle. My home was not blight. I was renovating my home. My sister and her husband were overseeing this process for me. This has become a decade-long and ongoing journey. A nonprofit in Detroit offered to help me get my house back, but they let it slip through the cracks. The county, the Wayne County Treasurer, the land bank moved on to auction my home, not once, but twice. Here's the thing. I had the Hope exemption. I proved my status as a graduate student. I proved that the nonprofit was assisting me to try and auction my home back, but they threw their hands up and said the land bank is its own entity. They refused to stand in the gap for me. I was renovating my home. I moved back to Detroit and found that the locks on my home had been changed. They still sold my home in the auction. I feel as though that they used the information that I shared with them against me. This caused me a lot of stress. There was depression, shame, guilt, crying, reaching out to multiple organizations who just said, oh, sorry, we just helped some Detroiters. You're too late for this. Oh, sorry, we can't deal with the land bank because they've got their own processes. Or like in my case, when I went to a city office, someone asked me, did I have the cash now? Do I have the cash now? I was so deflated. I was heartbroken. I still have a dream to have my nieces and nephews, my sons, my artist friends, my long life friends and neighbors back in our family legacy home. I just want my home back. It's right there. It's right there. Detroiters deserve to be treated with dignity. I just want my home back. I tell you this, I found the Coalition for Property Tax Justice after all of my reaching out. It wasn't until I found the Coalition for Property Tax Justice that I found out that I was being overassessed. Even in the historic district of Detroit, these homes, excuse me, were being overassessed. I was overtaxed. I'm sure my mother, while she was living there, was being overtaxed. My home should not have been foreclosed. My home should have never been auctioned. I shared this information far and wide. I shared and shared and shared, and they still went forward. Detroiters deserve dignity. The Coalition for Property Tax Justice is an organization where all homeowners can come and share their stories and know that they are not alone in this fight. They're not alone in losing their homes to illegally overassessed homes and being illegally overtaxed. I took all of my income tax returns from the year 2000 all the way up until 2013 and 14 to pay the property taxes on this home. And still, with the proof, with my name on the tax ledgers, they still did not take my information and apply it and make me whole and provide dignity to me and my family for our legacy home. I just want my home back. I want Detroiters who have not received their rightful dignity restoration by being compensated for being overtaxed to be compensated. I want Detroiters who have been affected by this to join us in this fight, to come to Coffee and Stories, to tell their story, to share with their neighbors, to share with their Block clubs, share with your churches, share with your community organizations. This is how we win. I just want my home back. And thank you, Coalition. Thank you, community, for showing up today. Thank you very much.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing your story. You know, we are fully aware that there's a lot of emotional cost to telling your story. It's such a painful story. And we just honor you for, again, just being emotionally vulnerable and telling your very powerful story, because there's a lot of people in this room and listening to this press conference that are in a very similar position. And your story is the story of many Detroiters. So, Alex, we can't thank you enough. We can't thank you enough. All right, you all, we're going to do our first action. So we want to make sure as a coalition that no one else gets foreclosed on for illegally inflated property taxes. So as an organization, we have created a property tax appeal project. MJ, let's go ahead and put up the slide here. All right, you all. So what we've created is an app that where it's only for homeowners, it's not for landlords, but as a homeowner, you can go through the app and it's a self-help. In the years past, you know, we have represented you all before the March Board of Review and the Michigan Tax Tribunal to file the appeal. But this year, in order for us to help more people, we have made it a self-help platform. So all you have to do, again, go to this link. The team is dropping the link in the chat, and go through the app, and it'll tell you if you're being overassessed. If you're not being overassessed, amazing, right? That's great news. But if you are being overassessed, it makes it super easy for you to file an appeal with the March Board of Review. And so if you are a homeowner listening to this telecast, I want you to take this link and go through it and file the appeal. What's most helpful is if you have some damage to your home, so the assessor thinks it's worth one amount, but it's really worth a lower amount, you should be taxed on a lower amount because there's some damage on the inside the assessor can't see. You need to take pictures of that damage, upload that in the app, and that will be part of your appeal, right? To say, look, assessor, you think my home is worth X, it's really worth Y because of all of this damage. So again, have the pictures of the damage ready before you get into the app so that you can submit your property tax appeal. And I will also say that don't just take care of yourself. What we are doing here is power building. We're doing community organizing. And so send this link to 5 other homeowners you know at your church, synagogue, mosque, workplace, in your family, in your neighborhood, through your block clubs. We need your help getting the work out. Now, Rada and the team, please put in the chat. We have a property tax appeal. We have a toolkit that helps you help us get the word out. And so I want them to put that in the chat. It has a flyer, a sample email, anything to make it easier for you to help us reach people who may need this service. So they're going to put that in the chat now. The property tax appeal, we call it our share packet, that helps you all get this information to your block clubs. We're making it super easy. All right, because again, our coalition is about action. We're not just here to complain. We're saying no, we are going to help you fight this illegality. And that's what our property tax appeal app is for. It's getting better and better every year. So again, please, if you're a homeowner, go check your taxes and make sure you have at least 5 other people check their property taxes as well. All right. Thank you for that. All right, now we are ready for questions. We're going to do media. We're going to take your questions first if you're a member of the media. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question and you're a member of the media. If you're a community member with a question, go ahead and put your question in the chat, and then I will answer those questions accordingly as well. All right. So first, if we have any members of the media who have questions, again, go ahead and raise your hands so that you will be recognized. While we wait for that, I'm going to go ahead. We already have some community questions that I'm going to go ahead with. First community question I see here is, does Detroit face fines for knowingly being out of compliance with the MMAO standards? What legal action can be taken? All right. And so again, what I need you to understand Detroit is doing is they're doing a kind of legal back end, right? So legally, it is correct, right? So legally, they're required to have an MMAO certified assessor signing the assessment roll, and that's what they're doing. The problem is that qualified individual is not leading the assessment division, right? The person who doesn't have the qualification is leading the assessment division. And so that's how I need you to understand. It was like a legal end run that is happening currently in Detroit, right? So it's kind of following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. Clearly, what the law is trying to do is say we want a qualified person running the assessments in the city, but instead they have the qualified person legally signing the assessment roll while the person without the qualification is actually running the office. So that's what I need Detroiters to understand is happening currently in Detroit, right? Is this kind of legal end run to have Alvin Horn running the department, although he does not have the required qualification. So that is the answer to that question. All right. And then the next question we have is, let me see. Someone's asking, would you provide a toolkit for neighborhood associations and block clubs to send out talking points and emails to advocate for these issues to our residents? A toolkit needs to be in plain language, layperson terms for quick action alerts. We could not agree with you more. And the team, please put the name of the people who are asking these questions so I can call out their names. I'm just getting questions with no names attached. But yes, we agree with you. And part of the toolkit we have prepared and the team will be dropping in the chat is the property tax appeal project. We have, again, we make these toolkits that provide to you a sample email, sample social media posts, a flyer, right? We make it super easy for you to help us get the word out. And the toolkit we have available now is around the property tax appeal project. All right. It's around the property tax appeal project. So yes, we have that there and available for you. All right, the next question, and that question was by Miss Janice Hazel. Thank you for that question, Miss Janice Hazel. The next question we have here is, where can I get access to the listing of properties that have been tax foreclosed? And again, that is printed every year in the newspaper. All right, so that is printed every year in the newspaper. And so that's where you can get that public listing from. All right. I'm going to take a break from questions. Again, if we have any members of the media with questions, please raise your hand so I can see you and you can be recognized. But I'm going to take a break from questions to tell you about, again, if we could put the next slide up, MJ, about the press conference. All right. As I told you, we are having a second virtual press conference on April 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Here is the action card. Again, here is the RSVP link. Again, the date, which should be on this action card, is April 10th. And it's at 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, the significance of April 10th is it is the first 100 days. That is the 100 days. And again, at that point, we're going to be providing you all with a report card so you know exactly what the new administration has done and hasn't done. We are going to say that, we have to also give this new administration some grace. They might not be able to get everything done in the first 100 days because there are several priorities, high priorities that the current administration has. But we will show you, our job is to say where they are at the first 100 days on the issue of property tax justice. That will be the report card we're issuing on day 100, but day 100 is not the end of the fight, right? Day 100 is where we're going to give you an assessment of where things are, but we are then hoping to continue to work with the Sheffield administration to improve those grades, really, again, get to the place where we have property tax justice. So go ahead and RSVP right now. The team should be putting the link in the chat about how to RSVP for the press conference. Put the date and time in the link in the chat as well, team, to make sure everyone knows the date and the time. And RSVP now for that press conference. Again, come back and let's see how the Sheffield administration has done on again, April 10th. April 10th. All right. I just want to give Professor Berry a chance to talk a little bit about, again, the work his team has been doing nationally. And I want you to really understand, again, this is not just a Detroit problem. This is a national issue, and his team has been working nationally with various different assessment divisions, and they've had quite a bit of success. And we're excited to have his team come to Detroit again. We just spoke with the mayor's team yesterday, and they are excited to have Professor Berry and his team come to help us in Detroit get our assessments correct. Professor Berry, can you talk a little bit about your national work?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I think it is important, the point you just made, which is that this problem, though, in some sense, is at its most extreme in Detroit, is a national problem. And so we've studied jurisdictions across the country. There are roughly 3,000 counties in the United States, and we've collected data and done the studies in almost all of them and found that about 90% of the counties in the United States have regressivity. Not all of them or most of them as extreme as the regressivity in Detroit, but it's a really pervasive problem. And one of the reasons this problem is so pervasive and widespread is because of the statistical methods that assessors use to value properties. And I won't bore everyone with the details of that, but there are just some basic flaws in how assessments are generally done and that lead to regressivity. I'm pleased to report that, in Cook County in Chicago, there have been significant reforms that involved the election of a new assessor, hired a new data science team, took a completely different methodological approach to valuing homes, and had dramatic increases in the improvements of the fairness and accuracy of the assessments here. And my team at the University of Chicago has been following that work and following other important reforms nationwide and developing a set of methods that can be used in other assessing jurisdictions to also improve this regressivity problem. And as Professor Atuahene referenced, we had a great conversation yesterday with Mayor Sheffield and Assessor Horn about the possibility of our group from the University of Chicago collaborating and trying to contribute to the reforms and improvements that I know Assessor Horn is trying to make in his group as he tries to develop new and better models for valuation. So we're excited about the possibility of that collaboration. But yeah, we've got a group of data scientists here who are working. I'll say that a lot of the improvements come from applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence. This is a great setting. The assessment setting is really a setting of pure prediction, and we're just getting better and better at predictions in recent years because of advances in machine learning. So I won't bore everyone, as I said, with a lot of the details of the statistics behind that, other than to say I think this is a pervasive problem, but it's a problem that can be solved, and really look forward to trying to help that happen in Detroit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Professor Berry. Thank you, Professor Berry. All right, let's continue with the questions. We have a couple more questions. We have a question from Ms. Tahira. She's asking, can City Council claw back the retroactive money from LLCs who illegally receive the breaks from illegally claiming PREs? And yes, Ms. Tahira, that is absolutely part of the law, that if these LLCs illegally claim the LLC, the assessment division has the power to go back 3 years to get that money back. And we are demanding that the assessment division do just that, is to do that 3-year clawback. Again, the problem is that how it was being done is instead of focusing on these LLCs, last year what the assessment division did, again, they sent a letter to homeowners, and when they didn't respond, they took their PRE away and then charged them 3 years back taxes. Again, that's when at Coffee and Stories we were inundated with folks, again, mostly seniors, who were horrified that their property taxes had shot up and they had a bill for back taxes, right? And we helped hundreds of people get their PRE back. And we're saying next time this is done, again, it needs to be done in a process that doesn't cause all of that chaos that the way they did it last year. And that's what we want, some guarantees from the Sheffield administration, that if this ever happens again, there's a more transparent process with more notice before we remove our seniors from remove the PRE from our seniors. So, Mr. Hira, yes, there is a way to do that, to do that. Absolutely. Now, yes, now the next question here is from Miss Janice. She's asking, is there an interactive tool that can provide the lookup access for residents to determine how much they were overassessed? And Miss Janice, the answer to that is, the main tool we have is that tool in the Detroit News. The team can put that link in the chat, where we discovered that the city of Detroit had overtaxed Detroiters by $600 million. And the thing that was so powerful about that Detroit News expose is they had a calculator in the news article that allowed individual Detroiters to figure out how much they individually were overtaxed. Now, that then, once people understood how this was affecting them individually, that's when we really got some traction on this issue, right? That's when people became outraged and really were demanding justice, right? Call 'em Out Coalition led a wonderful protest at City Council based on this information, et cetera. But that is the calculator that we have right now, Ms. Janice, is still that Detroit News calculator. Yes, so that's what we have there. Our next question, again, I don't see a name here, but it says, does the overtaxation problem apply to commercial properties as well? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, it does. But as a coalition, we are we call ourselves small but mighty. So we just have a limited capacity. And so we've decided to focus on owner occupiers, homeowners, versus landlords or commercial properties. But this problem exists for commercial properties as well. But again, what we focus on are owner occupiers. Why? Because, when you lose your home, you're losing more than just bricks and mortar. You're losing like Alex has just shared with us. You're losing intergenerational wealth. You're losing intergenerational memories. In the process of eviction, people lose so much. They lose family photos. They lose grandmama's quilts. They lose those height marks that we etch into the door frames to mark our children's growth. They're separated from longtime neighbors who were like family. When people lose their home through property tax foreclosure, they lose so much. And so that's why our focus as a coalition is on these people, owner occupiers, because that is our priority, and it needs to be the city's priority in terms uh, of who we take care of first. So yes, this is also a problem for commercial properties, but we're focused on, again, the most vulnerable people who are occupying. This is the home that they live in that is currently being overtaxed. All right. So we have come to the end of our time. I just want to give Professor Berry an opportunity to give some last words before I give my last words.
Thank you. I think the only last words I'd like to give is words of gratitude to the coalition. I think doing the work that I do, which is so focused on the data and analytics side of things, it's really important to have this connection to real people and how real folks are affected by the kind of problems that we document, and how real folks can be helped by the kind of improvements that we hope we can make in the system. So I thank everyone for having attended. I thank the coalition for having hosted this conference and the work that y'all continue to do.
Thank you, Professor Berry. All right, y'all, before we end, I want to make sure everyone, again, do RSVP for the next press conference, April 10th, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here virtually. Once you RSVP, you'll get the link and we'll send you reminders. And we want to make sure our other link about the property tax appeal process, you all take advantage of that service if you're a homeowner. And again, organizing is reach one to teach one. Make sure every homeowner you know gets access to that property tax appeal self-help tool. All right, y'all. I love you all so much. It's the honor of my life to do this work and to be hand in hand with you all in this struggle. And so I thank you. I love you. And we will see you on April 10th.